It was a bright California afternoon. The private airstrip outside, Los Angeles, shimmered in the golden sun as luxury cars lined up near a glossy private jet. Cameras clicked, champagne glasses clinked, and laughter echoed across the runway. A billionaire tech mogul, Ethan Cole, stood at the center of it all. Designer shades, expensive suit, arrogance dripping from every move he made. He was hosting an air challenge, a game he invented to show off his new line of private jets. Reporters, influencers, and elite guests circled around, waiting for the show to begin. Then she walked in, a tall black woman in a navy blue pilot uniform. Her cap tilted slightly, her walk calm but confident. Her name was Ava Carter, a professional pilot and former Air Force trainee. The crowd's chatter faded for a moment as she approached the billionaire. Ethan raised an eyebrow, smirking. "You're the pilot?" Ava looked him straight in the eye. "Yes, sir. I'm here for the challenge." Laughter rippled through the crowd. A few men in suits whispered something, one of them chuckling. "Does she even know how to start that plane?" Ethan grinned, taking a slow sip of his drink. "Sweetheart, if you can really fly this plane..." He tapped the jet beside him. "I'll marry you right here in front of everyone." The crowd roared with laughter, phones raised to record the moment. Ava didn't flinch. She smiled, calm, proud, and slightly amused. "Deal," she said. "But don't cry when I take off." The laughter died. Ethan's grin faded for just a second as he realized she wasn't joking. And that's where everything changed. The cameras followed. Ava as she walked toward the jet, her boots clicking against the runway. Each step carried the weight of years of struggle, years of proving herself in a world that doubted her just because of her skin, her gender, her background. As she placed her hand on the cold metal body of the aircraft, a flash of memory hit her. She was back at the small airfield in Georgia, 10 years ago, watching planes soar above her for the first time. Her father, a mechanic, had told her, "You see that sky, Ava? That's where you belong. Don't let anyone tell you it's too high." But the world did tell her, again and again. Flight schools turned her down. Sponsors disappeared. People smiled politely but laughed behind her back. A black girl? Flying planes? Maybe stick to dreams that fit your kind. Those words had once burned like fire in her chest. But instead of breaking her, they forged her. Every insult, every rejection, it became fuel. And today she was standing here, about to silence every doubt in one single flight. Ethan, meanwhile, leaned against a car, watching her curiously. He'd seen confidence before, but never like this. One of his business partners whispered, "She's gonna crash that thing. You'll make headlines." Ethan smirked. "Then let's hope she has a parachute." Inside the cockpit, Ava ran her hands across the controls like a pianist preparing for a symphony. Every button, every switch felt like home. She closed her eyes for a moment. Steady breath, calm heart. "Let's show them what a black woman can do," she whispered. Her fingers danced across the switches. The jet's engines hummed to life, a deep, powerful growl filling the air. Outside, the crowd stepped back in surprise. Even Ethan straightened, his smug expression fading slightly as the sound hit his chest. The jet started rolling forward, smooth, steady. Ava's voice came through the radio, confident and clear. "Tower, this is Captain Ava Carter. Permission for takeoff." The control tower responded instantly. "Captain Carter, runway's clear." "You are good to go." The nose lifted. The engines roared. And in a blink, she was in the sky. The crowd below stood frozen. The billionaire who mocked her now stared upward, his mouth slightly open. The jet climbed higher, spinning gracefully, cutting through the clouds with precision and power. It wasn't just a flight, it was poetry in motion. Ethan muttered under his breath. "She actually did it." His friend laughed nervously. "Maybe start picking a ring, boss." Ethan didn't laugh this time. His eyes stayed fixed on the sky, watching Ava pull the plane into a perfect loop. The sunlight reflected off the jet, turning it into a streak of silver fire. In that moment, the crowd that once mocked her started cheering. Loud, amazed, and speechless. She wasn't flying to impress anyone. She was flying for every girl who had ever been told no. After a few heart-stopping maneuvers, Ava brought the plane down, soft and smooth, a landing so perfect it looked effortless. The engines cooled. The crowd erupted in applause. Ava stepped out, calm and steady. as if she hadn't just rewritten the meaning of confidence. Ethan approached slowly, his usual arrogance replaced by something new, admiration. "You weren't kidding," he said quietly. Ava smiled. "I never do." She turned to walk away, leaving him speechless, and for the first time, humbled. Where Ava's past reveals the pain, sacrifice, and power behind that fearless smile. Hit like, share, and subscribe, because this story's only just taken off. The crowd was still clapping when Ava walked away from the jet. Her heart raced, but her face stayed calm, confident, almost regal. She didn't need applause. The flight had already given her what she came for: respect. Ethan Cole stood silently, hands in his pockets, watching her disappear behind the hangar doors. For the first time in years, he didn't have a comeback line, no witty insult, no cocky grin, just silence. And somewhere in that silence, something shifted. He'd built his empire on ego, thinking money made him untouchable. But watching Ava in the sky, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: small. Inside the hangar, Ava removed her gloves and sat on a steel bench. The noise outside faded into a quiet hum. For a second, she closed her eyes, and her mind drifted back to a place she hadn't visited in years, a small town in Georgia, where a young girl stood beside her father in a dusty workshop. Airplane posters covered the walls, their corners curling from heat and age. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Ava, you gotta believe in your wings before anyone else can." She'd nodded then, small, curious, full of dreams. Years later, after her father's death, those same dreams turned into her only source of strength. She worked at a gas station during the day and studied aeronautics at night. Sleep was rare, money was short, but giving up was never an option. When she applied to her first flight academy, the man at the counter didn't even look up from his computer. "We don't get many of your kind here," he'd said flatly. Ava remembered forcing a smile and replying, "Then you're about to." She spent years fighting her way through rejection letters, racial remarks, and whispered laughter. But every insult became a spark, something to burn through the darkness. And today, when she touched the clouds, it was her father's voice she heard again. "See, baby girl, you're flying!" Later that evening, as the party died down, Ethan found himself sitting alone in his glass office overlooking the runway. The city lights shimmered in the distance. In his hand was a champagne glass he hadn't touched. His assistant entered quietly. "Mr. Cole, that pilot, Ava Carter, the media's all over her flight. They're calling her the Sky Queen. Do you want us to issue a statement?" Ethan shook his head. "No, not yet." The assistant nodded and left. Ethan stared out the window, watching the same jet Ava had flown. He remembered her confidence, the calm in her eyes, a calm that money couldn't buy. For the first time, he wanted to know who she really was. He searched her name online. Articles popped up. Ava Carter, the black woman breaking barriers in aviation. He scrolled through interviews, photos of her in uniform, quotes where she talked about equality and representation. One line caught his attention. "I don't want to prove men wrong. I want to prove women right." Something about those words hit him hard. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the airfield early. The staff looked surprised. He never came in before noon. "Have you seen Captain Carter?" he asked the ground crew. They shrugged. "She left after the show, sir. Said she doesn't stay where she's not respected." Ethan frowned. "Did she say where she went?" "No idea, but she mentioned heading to Nevada. There's some air rescue training program there." Ethan's curiosity turned into something else. Determination. He wasn't used to chasing people, but Ava wasn't just anyone. She'd challenged him. Not with words, but with grace and courage. He boarded his helicopter and told his pilot, "Set course for Nevada. I need to meet someone." 2 days later, Ava stood on a dusty runway in Nevada, watching a rescue helicopter prepare for flight. She was training new recruits, young pilots, men and women who looked up to her like she was a legend. One of them, a young Latina trainee, asked, "Captain Carter, were you really challenged by that billionaire on TV?" Ava smiled faintly. "Yes." The girl grinned. "And you made him eat his words?" Ava laughed softly. Let's just say he learned a lesson about underestimating people. But deep down, she couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. Not because of his words, but because of the look in his eyes after she landed. There had been something real there, regret, maybe even admiration. As she walked toward the hangar, she saw a familiar helicopter landing. Dust swirled through the air. A man stepped out, tall, confident, but not arrogant this time. His jacket flapped in the wind, his hair tousled by the blades. Ethan Cole. Ava folded her arms, raising an eyebrow. "You lost, Mr. Billionaire?" He smiled, but it was a humble one this time. "Actually, I came to apologize." Ava crossed her arms tighter. "Apologies don't erase arrogance." "You're right," he said softly. "But maybe understanding does." She looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. He wasn't the same man from that air show. His voice carried something different now. Respect. "You made me see something I never noticed before," Ethan continued. "The world doesn't lack talent. It lacks chances. I've been part of that problem. And I want to fix it." Ava studied his face for a long moment. The wind tugged at her uniform collar. Finally, she said, "Words are easy, Ethan. Change isn't." "Then let me prove it," he said. "Let me fund your aviation program. Let's train women who never got their first chance." For the first time, Ava's expression softened. She looked away for a moment, then back at him. "You really mean that?" "For once," Ethan said quietly, "I do." They stood there, under the blazing Nevada sun. Two people from different worlds, united by one simple truth: respect isn't given, it's earned. And in that silent connection, something deeper began to form. Not romance yet, but understanding. Maybe the start of something that could change both of their lives, where Ava faces her biggest test yet, risking her life to save others. And Ethan finally learns what true courage really means. Like, share, and follow for the powerful finale! The Nevada sky was turning gray. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and dark clouds gathered over the desert base where Ava Carter trained her team. A storm was coming, the kind pilots dreaded. Ava stood at the hangar's edge, watching the radar screen flicker. One of her trainees rushed in, breathless. "Captain Carter, there's a distress signal from Flight 87. They're caught in the storm." "Losing altitude!" Her eyes shot to the monitor. The flight was only 40 miles out. A small private jet caught right in the storm's heart. "Do we have a rescue?" "Chopper ready?" she asked. The trainee shook his head. "No, ma'am, grounded. The winds are too strong." Ava clenched her jaw. She knew what that meant. No one else was going up there. Except her. She turned to her crew. "Prep Jet 2, I'm going after them." One of her co-pilots protested. "Ma'am, that's suicide. The storm's tearing through everything." "You can't?" Ava cut him off with a firm voice. "I can and I will. They don't have time for fear. Neither do I." As she climbed into her gear, lightning cracked outside, lighting up the hangar in blinding flashes. Then she heard another voice behind her. "You're not going alone." She turned. Ethan Cole stood there, soaked from the rain, eyes locked on her. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I heard the distress call," he said. "And I'm not letting you fly into that death trap by yourself." "You don't know how to handle a storm like this," she shot back. "Maybe not," Ethan said, stepping closer. "But I trust the woman who can." For a second, she hesitated. Then she tossed him a headset. "Fine, strap in. And don't touch anything unless I tell you to." The engines roared to life. Wind howled like a living beast as the jet rolled onto the runway. Raindrops lashed against the windshield. Ava's voice cut through the thunder, calm and steady. "Tower, this is Captain Carter. Requesting emergency clearance for rescue mission. Coordinates locked on Flight 87. The control tower replied, panicked. "Captain, visibility is 0. "You can't go up there!" "Watch me," she said, and pushed the throttle. The jet shot forward, slicing through the rain. As the nose lifted, the storm swallowed them whole. Lightning flashed around them, shaking the aircraft. Ethan gripped the armrest, knuckles white. "How can you stay so calm?" he shouted over the roar. "Because panic kills faster than storms," Ava replied. Every second tested her skills. The plane bucked and rolled, alarms screaming. She fought the turbulence with precision, her eyes focused, her hands steady. Ethan looked at her, really looked. This wasn't arrogance. This was mastery, bravery, grace under fire. After 20 minutes of battling chaos, Ava spotted the faint blinking lights of Flight 87 through the dense clouds. The plane was spinning, smoke trailing behind it. "We've got them," she said. "I'm going to guide them down." She switched her radio. "Flight 87, this is Captain Carter. Do you copy?" A trembling voice answered. "We're losing control. Instruments are dead! We're going down." "Listen to me," Ava said firmly. "I need you to trust my voice. Pull your nose up 10 degrees, now." Ethan watched as she calmly talked the panicking pilot through every maneuver. Her tone steady as steel. "Good, hold it. You're doing great. Now follow my light beacon. I've got you." Minutes felt like hours. Then finally the radar cleared. Both planes broke through the clouds, the ground in sight. Ava guided them down inch by inch until both jets landed safely on the storm-soaked runway. The moment the wheels touched down, the air control tower erupted in cheers. Ethan exhaled. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. "You did it," he whispered. Ava smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "We did it." When they stepped out, soaked and exhausted, the rescued passengers ran toward Ava, crying, thanking her over and over. Reporters had already gathered, filming live as emergency crews rushed in. Ethan watched from a few feet away, overwhelmed. He'd never felt respect like this. Raw, pure, earned. When the crowd finally cleared, he walked over to her, rain dripping from his hair. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Ava blinked. "Ethan, what are you doing?" He smiled. Not the arrogant smirk from before, but something genuine. "Remember what I said at that air show? If you can fly this plane, I'll marry you." He opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant silver ring. "You didn't just fly that plane. Ava, you flew through hell and brought people home. I've met hundreds of women in my life, but none who could do what you just did." Ava looked at him, surprised, emotional. "Ethan, I don't need a ring to prove my worth." "I know," he said softly. "This isn't about proving anything. It's about honoring the woman who taught me what strength really means." Ava smiled, the kind of smile that holds both pride and forgiveness. She took his hand gently, closing the ring box. "Then promise me one thing, Ethan. Anything. Use your voice, your power, and your money to lift others who were once laughed at. Don't make this moment about us. Make it about change." Ethan nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise." Months later, a new banner hung outside a bright, modern building. The Carter Cole Aviation Academy, for women who dare to fly. Hundreds of young women stood at the entrance, ready to begin their journey. Ava stood beside Ethan, both smiling as a new generation looked up to the sky. A reporter asked, "Captain Carter, what inspired you to start this academy?" Ava looked up at the clouds and said, "Because once, a man laughed at me for dreaming too high. Now I help others dream even higher." The crowd applauded. Ethan looked at her, pride glowing in his eyes. "So, Captain Carter," he said quietly, "are we ever going to finish that proposal?" Ava chuckled, glancing at the sky. "Maybe after my next flight?" And with that, she walked toward her jet, confident, fearless, unstoppable. As the engines roared and the plane lifted into the blue horizon, Ethan whispered to himself, "There she goes. The woman who taught the world how to fly." If Ava's story inspired you, hit like, share this video, and subscribe for more powerful, true, and emotional stories. Because somewhere out there, another Ava is waiting to take off.